Today is Monday, June 3rd, and this is Spring Office Hours Season 3, Episode 21, State of Spring Survey Results. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how are you doing?
It's a great time to be a Spring developer. That's all I can say. It's a great time, and it just keeps getting better.
I feel like we just did this, but next to each other.
We were in the same place. And it was good. We had a live audience. That was amazing. Yeah. I didn't realize how valuable having a live audience would be. Like, that energy was, you could touch it. It was, you feel it.
We saw Sergey, the conference organizer from Spring IO. We brought him in screen really quick. We're sitting here talking about Spring, and off to our left is just a group of the Spring team hacking away at something at the table. I'm sure fixing bugs.
It was special. It was a special episode for sure. If you didn't,
it was awesome.
You should take a look.
Yeah, we posted that. That replay is on YouTube, and the podcast is now on wherever you get your podcasts. So, again, this is Spring Office Hours. We do a live stream usually every Monday from 1 to 2. We kind of change it up depending on what's going on. DaShaun's on a remote location today, still traveling the world. But you can always catch the replay. And again, we turn this into a podcast, so you can get us wherever you get your podcasts from. If you are joining us here live on the live stream, do us a favor and get your questions in. We have an agenda today, but we are always happy to answer questions. Part of this show, the contract for this show, DaShaun, is to catch everybody up on what's happening in the Spring ecosystem and answer your questions.
That's the thing, right? That Spring IO is great. But in between your Spring IO conferences, would it be nice to still have that group, that audience, the people that you can go to and ask questions? That's what this is about.
I heard you talking to a lot of people too throughout the conference who had questions, and you were like, wouldn't it be great if there was a place where you could take your questions and get them answered? And yeah, you're never stop promoting the show, so I appreciate that.
I mean, it's what I want. It's the reason why the show exists, right? Because it's the thing that I wish that I had. So hopefully, and I know, like, we've got a great community, and I know that people are learning about it, and the audience gets bigger and better all the time. So yeah.
And we are kind of amazed at the number of people who join us in this live stream every week. But we just see a number, like just a number that increments. We see some people on the live stream. It's very different to be in a conference like Spring IO and talk to people who watch the show all the time. And that was really exciting for me. I got a lot of really great feedback from that.
Of hearing about how much people appreciate the show. Never get tired of it.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. So today we have a little bit of an agenda. We're going to talk a little bit more about Spring IO because when we went on, it was still like the morning of day 2. So there's still some things that happened, but really just kind of recap the conference. And then one of the things that happened at the conference was on the keynote, Jürgen Haller was able to kind of go through some of the results from the state of Spring, as far as like what versions of Java the community is running, what versions of Spring the community is running, and there were some interesting results. So we have this State of the Spring survey that we send out every year, and it's really our way to kind of find out how the community is using Java and Spring, right? And that survey wrapped up maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and now we have like a detailed report on the results from that survey. So we're going to spend some time going through that survey. You can get a copy of the survey yourself. I'll leave that in the show notes, but it'll be interesting to kind of go through it because I've skimmed through it. I have not gone through it detailed. So it'll be fun to go through it together.
One of the other cool things was some of the live polls that they took during the keynote matched up, right? They were similar. So that was also interesting, I thought.
Well, it does make sense though, right? Because the State of Spring survey was targeted to Spring developers, and we were in a conference with all Spring developers. So
I think that it was just how often do you get a confirmation of your results like that? Yeah, that's all. That was just very interesting. Like, oh yeah, and our live results matched up with the survey. Again, we know our audience.
Yep.
The validity of these results are
We got a comment here, and this goes with a theme that you were talking to people about at the conference. It says, I recently upgraded from Spring Boot 3.2.5 to 3.2.6. Should I upgrade to 3.3.0? If yes, what do I get from that?
Yes. The answer is yes. The answer is always yes. And I'll tell you one thing. First of all, don't always ask what you get, what you give. When you upgrade to 3.3, you're on the latest and greatest. All the work that Spring team has put in, you're getting all of the benefit of their work. Mm-hmm. Also, they're giving you a lot better things out of the box. The default settings have improved. The one thing that I kind of lean in the most, the thing that I'm most excited about are performance and efficiency updates. So with Spring Boot 3.3, the class data sharing features, the things that you get for free, the performance improvements that you get for free out of the Kettle build packs is huge. So if you'll stay tuned to these normal channels, you will start to see some demos comparing Spring Boot 3.2 out of the box with 3.0, with 2.7, and you will see some of those benefits. So if nothing else, the performance improvements that you get with Spring Boot 3.3. The next thing is, I would say, is observability. The observability improvements that have come with this release, top notch. So that's what I'll stop there. How about you?
Yeah. So for me, it's a couple things. Well, first off, stay tuned to next week's show because we are doing a show on Spring Boot 3.3. So we'll talk a lot more about these features a little bit more in depth next week. Two, it's not always there are a set of features that come with Spring Framework and Spring Boot, but it's not always about just those two projects, right? When a new release comes out like Spring Boot 3.3, a lot of the sub projects have their new project that gets included in those bits. So one example I can talk to is Spring for GraphQL 1.3 has been released. I got a chance to sit in Rawson's session on the latest new features in that. And so that's bundled with Spring Boot 3.3. So if you choose 3.3 and you choose Spring for GraphQL, you're pulling in the latest Spring for GraphQL features. So yes, and I would say now is a good time to upgrade to 3.3 because you don't want to sit here and wait for the next 3 versions to come out, right? Because then it's a lot harder to upgrade. It's very easy to move from last update to this one than it is to wait, 6 months, 12 months.
And I could talk about this for a whole hour. But in general, if you don't do it now, when would you do it? If you don't upgrade from 3.2 to 3.3 now, when would you do it? Because why? Like, what's the reason for not upgrading? The better place for us to be in is when new releases come out that we're able to adopt them, do the upgrades, see if there's pain points. Because what if there's a problem with upgrading? Take 3.3 off the picture. If you don't have a system in place to take on the new releases, 3.3 it might have some security fixes, but they're going to be in 3.2.6 anyways because they're this close together and they're supported. 3.2 is still in that green support window.
Yep.
But aside from that, what you need, what your organization needs is to be in a place where you can take the new releases, because what if it's not just a performance improvement? What if it's a security fix? If you don't have that automation in place, you don't have those muscles in place to take new things and to validate new releases, then what? Because the bad actors, they want you to wait. They want you to see how long you will wait before you take on the new release, because that's their opportunity. So,
yep. All right, I got a couple here. First off, I have nice morning mug, Dan. Thanks. This was for my kids for a previous Father's Day. I am your father. And then I'm going to lob a softball up here for DaShaun. But we have a lot of microservices that use Spring Boot 2.5 and 2.7. We don't know how to start the migration process. Any recommendations? Before you get into this, I just want to tell a story. In front of the booth, we had a lot of people asking the same question, and DaShaun would pull out his laptop, sit down with everyone, and actually show how this works. So what are some recommendations here, DaShaun?
I mean, later he says, open rewrite is not a good idea. I don't understand why. So the first question is like, hey, we don't know how to start the migration process. Open rewrite is the place to start. Open rewrite combined with your docs, that's the place to start. There's a well-defined path from 2.5 and 2.7 up. And that's where you can start. If you're running into problems, here's what I'm going to say. Use Open Rewrite. Get through all of the upgrades that you can get through, because some of your apps are going to upgrade easily. Maybe not all, and typically it's not all. For me, the numbers that I get are between 15 and 70% of your apps are going to upgrade with Open Rewrite recipes out of the box, and they're going to upgrade easy. Maybe you'll have some property changes to go along with that. And for those ones that don't upgrade, that's okay. But upgrade the ones that you can upgrade as soon as possible, because if you don't, you're leaving money on the table. You're exposing yourself to risk, right? 2.5 is no longer supported commercially or in OSS. 2.7, if you have OSS support, not as much of a risk. But you need to get those 2.5 upgraded as fast as possible, because they're no longer getting patched.
3.0 is out of open source support now, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're falling way behind there. Right. And as my good friend Nate Shuda says, like whiskeys, working in small batches is a good idea, right? Mm-hmm. So instead of moving from 2.5 to 3.3, take the migration steps of going from 2.5 to 2.7 to 3.0, and because you kind of mitigate the like overall, like if you move from 2.5 to 3.3, that's a lot of work. But if you move from 2.5 to 2.7, that's one step that you can take. And then you can understand what that process is like and do that across all of your other different services.
Yep. And I understand that not everything is going to work. And this one came up a lot, and it comes up even more. It came up a lot last week. Those internal libraries, those common libraries, those legacy libraries that have been holding you back, because those things become a bottleneck. And I had several conversations at the conference last week about, is that really the right way forward? Is that really the right way to have those common? Are you really saving yourself anything by putting a bottleneck in place of these upgrades? Because what if there was a CVE today? What if we had to upgrade all the POMs and you have to go and upgrade that legacy library? Those legacy libraries, they might work. They might be beneficial. My current default setting is, if it's a framework, then yes. But if it's just a common library in order to put in some guardrails on things, then no. It just becomes a bottleneck. So it's a new day. It's 2024, and the way that we have to take care of our software has changed a little bit.
And like, you're going to have to do this at some point. Yes, I understand that this in-house third-party library you wrote to do whatever it does is a bottleneck right now, but it's always going to be a bottleneck. Like, it's not going away, and kicking the can down the road further is not going to solve any problems.
All right. So this audience, I hope we get a new Java version. How often? We get a new Spring Boot version.
Every 6 months.
Like, so if you're not doing that, you're just going to be asking the same questions 6 months from now, right? So the better way is to get yourself into a place where you can take these upgrades and you can stay on the latest and greatest version, because you don't want to tell your kids that you're still running Spring Boot 2.5. You don't want them to know that.
And most likely you're probably still running Java 8. And we've seen the numbers moving from Java 8 to Java 17 alone is a 20 to 25% increase in performance, all the security benefits that come with it. So even if it's just to upgrade Java and you're not interested in any of the Spring Boot features yet, you will be. But if you're not interested in that yet, just moving versions of Java will get you there. And then you can get to Java 17, which will get you closer to Java 21, virtual thread support,
even
more performance benefits. So I understand that it is an undertaking that you have to like figure out, but at the end of the day, it's going to be well worth it.
And I mean, Mohammed, like, the thing is, like, we do this show. This show is not just for us to like talk. The show is also the channel. Like, when you need help, maybe this conversation, specifically, maybe it would be good for you to have some one-on-one time, and you know how to get a hold of me. Like, we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation about what you're getting stuck with, and I can give you some help. I can tell you some of the things that I've learned with working with a bunch of other orgs from all over the globe, like we do. So,
DaShaun, if we work for Broadcom, we work in the division of Tanzu. We do have commercial services that kind of help with this. We have a new application advisor coming out. What could that help people with?
So, understood, right? The commercial support, commercial access, just by having that commercial support, you have access to the Spring Boot. You have prioritized support. So instead of just putting your tickets on GitHub, whatever's blocking, you can say, hey, I'm blocked by this. Here's what we expected. Here's what we need help with. and it gets prioritized because you have commercial support. If it is a blocker in the framework, if it's something that needs to be fixed in open source, then the Spring team will take that ticket. Maybe it's a bug, and they will open it into open source and they will fix it in the open source version.
Mhm.
But because if you have commercial support, it gets prioritized different. That's all.
Yeah. And with this application advisor, I know we have some curated open rewrite recipes that our labs teams have gone through and really kind of fine-tuned for this type of scenario. So if you're a little bit stuck and you want to bring us in to kind of help kickstart maybe one of your applications, see how this process goes, and then take that off on your own, that's something you can talk to us about as well. So I see another comment here from Amin, and now I remember Amin because I was a lot of people came up to me and was just talking to me about like how helpful our content is, some of the videos I make. And that was really, it was just really great to see in person. And I remember one individual said, Dan, I love your content, but we need more of it. So I know who you are now. Amin.
Wait, more? You need more?
Amin said, make more videos.
Every single week. How could you? I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if we can do more. I don't know if it's possible.
It's hard. I'm going to ask ChatGPT today if there's a way to clone me. And if there is, then maybe we can get back and figure that out, Amin. Okay. Yes, we did take a picture together. I remember that.
That's wonderful.
I appreciate that. Amin, thank you. So yeah, Spring IO, pretty awesome, right? It was really quick for me. I left on a Tuesday, got in on Wednesday. We had a speaker dinner Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday conference, left Saturday morning. So it was a whirlwind of like physical jet lag, mental exhaustion just from being around, like sitting in all of those sessions, talking to so many people. I mean, it was so great. It was also really exhausting. How about for you?
It was. First of all, it was great. Again, my big takeaways are that the Spring team, even for those GitHub issues that have been open for years, I heard it from multiple projects. Jürgen got really excited in his session about the core container in Spring Framework and all of the things that he's been able to do, things that have been bothering him for years and are some of our customers in the ecosystem for years.
Yeah.
These basic, like fundamental things are getting improved. Things that have been a part of the framework for years. Issues that have been open for years are now being improved, and they're going to be coming in Spring Boot or Spring Framework 6.2. And to see him talk for an hour about how beans are initialized, I got so much joy because people just like you, people that have been using Spring for 20 years, for a lot of those years, they've been waiting, right? I don't have any that I can think of applications that have hundreds of beans that are being initialized, where these kind of performance things, they've never been a bottleneck for me, but at scale, right? Spring is used, it's fundamental for massive, global 2,000 customers all over the world. And some of these things have been a pain point. And finally now somebody wakes up, and when they pull in Spring Boot 6.2, the milestone release, they're like, it's fixed. Our startup times, our problems have been resolved. How did this happen? What did I do? I wish I knew how it fixed. They have to read the release notes, and then they're going to see that Jürgen has changed the way that we initialize our beans.
And so Spring Framework 6.2, that'll be included with Spring Boot 3.4 later this year in November.
Yes,
is that
November.
It? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. I know you're telling me all about that session. I wasn't able to attend, so I'm eagerly waiting for the recording to watch that myself.
It was an hour of Jürgen, as excited as I've ever seen him, speaking about these improvements. And I know that it's things that have been keeping him up at night. But with all of the other things, I also know how excited he is to get this one little set of features out the door. I know how excited he is. And then at the same time, I know how lucky we are that that's something that we might not be dealing with today, but as Spring continues to grow, and as whatever size company you're in continues to grow and improve and stay competitive, because you don't have to be successful, right? There's no guarantees that your company is going to be successful, but you have this entire team of Spring engineers that are working to make everything that you take to production even better. And if you don't go and adopt those new versions, you're not. And if your competitors are taking the new releases and they're getting all those benefits, again, that's a deciding factor, right? It's those types of differentiators that are going to make the difference in today's economy.
Yeah, and there are a lot of reasons Spring has been successful for 20 years now. I think one of them, definitely points to Jurgen and his leadership. And I this was the first chance I had to meet Jurgen, and as you said, it wasn't just the way that beans are initialized. He's very passionate about everything he talks about. He's like really into it, and you can just see like where the leadership comes from Jurgen on the Spring team, top down.
Yes, and that same thing, the way that he does things, the other projects, and I'm specifically talking about Spring Observability, they were also able to go in and pull some of these older issues that have been open for years. They were able to get those things in, and also they were able to make connections with some of these other ecosystem libraries to help them to connect the dots. Like, oh, you should talk to this person and help. Yes, we've been thinking about this. We'll help. And here's what we've done with other partners in the same position. All of those things coming to fruition at a conference like that has been amazing.
Yep. Cool. So yeah, Spring IO, the keynote is online already. So if you head over to YouTube, you can find the Spring IO keynote. That was, we talked about it on the last show. There were a lot of really great kind of demos and walkthroughs of different products, projects. Really excited about things like Spring Monolith and Spring AI. I know those were kind of two big ones on my list. We got a comment here. Jürgen Haller is an amazing guy. He explains complex things in a very easy manner. I loved his talk when explaining the Spring Framework 6.2 core container changes.
That's it. That's the one. So
that's awesome.
Last thing before maybe we jump into the state of Spring. The other thing that is very evident is that this is still an open source community. I know that there's a lot of questions about like, hey, like RockOn, is Spring still gonna be a thing? I think that the community showed up, and I think that those questions became very clear for a lot of people that were there. It's still absolutely a thing. You can go look at the roadmap. It's still heading in the right direction. And then also the energy inside of the community and the way that the community comes together, especially at an event like this, it's very visible. There's a bunch of different players that come together, and the chemistry of not just the Spring engineering team and the advocates that surround that team, but also the rest of the ecosystem, our other friends in the ecosystem, our Phillips and Massiers and the likes, right? How they all come together, and we have a really good, not just Spring core, but we have a great Spring ecosystem that comes together and is listening to the community and trying to take it in the right direction. And I have a lot of confidence.
Yeah, speaking of the ecosystem, I think one of the other things that we kind of hit on was just seeing the number of speakers and attendees from all over the world. Part of the results from the conference were there. How many countries was it? It was
59.
Like 59 countries,
different countries.
So 59 different countries, a lot of diversity in the conference, a lot of women speakers in general. I noticed that was really great to see. Women attendees in general is not like other conferences I've been to. The diversity at this conference was amazing, and I think when you have that, you have a much wider range of ideas and presentations and talks. So I appreciated that a lot.
I will still say there's a lot of work to be done in
For sure.
tech in general, but it was definitely visible to me that this conference is different, and there was clearly more work put in. There's however it's done. The results definitely showed that it matters to this conference, and it showed in the attendance, in the audience, and the speakers.
Cool. All right. So Spring IO 2024 was awesome. The dates were announced for Spring IO 2025.
Lock it in.
I'm already working on some abstracts because I want to make sure I be there. I'm there. But yeah,
I'm working on my robot so that I can get my tickets. As soon as those tickets get announced, I want to hit that button.
Yes.
Because if I'm not mistaken, it always sells out, and I think that window gets closer and closer every. So I just want to make sure. I want to make sure that I have something in place so I can make sure that I can be there.
And we're telling you this because we want to see you there. So make sure you start planning for that if you can. It would be great to see more of you there. It was really great seeing all of you there this year. I'm just really excited about it. And hopefully I'll be there again next year. So, All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and throw something on the stage here. We like to start at calendar.spring.io. I know we mentioned this to a lot of people at the conference, and they're like, what? I didn't know this existed. And I'm
We
like,
have a lot of work
if you
to
were
do.
coming to Spring Office Hours, you would, because we talk about it every week. So this is our release calendar to give you an idea of what's being released in the ecosystem. So again, if you're not joining us on stream, you can head to calendar.spring.io. I'm taking a look at today is Monday, June 3rd. So we have a new release from Spring Stream Applications. We have some releases coming out tomorrow. Now it says Spring AI 1.0.0 Milestone 2. I don't think that's the case because Milestone 1 just came out last week. So we'll see.
I mean,
maybe
the
that
thing
gets
is,
moved.
everybody was all together. So
Yeah.
it might happen. I'm
Yeah.
never gonna bet against the Spring team, the Spring engineers. So yeah, look at Thomas, since he's already booked his Airbnb for next year. And I think he's gonna have a very special guest in his Airbnb if I was paying attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, very exciting.
And then we have Spring Shell 3.3.0 being released tomorrow. Another one of those projects that you and I love that we've been paying attention to. So I'm excited to jump into those release notes and see what's going on there. I know a couple of demos that you were doing table side and you mentioned Spring Shell and some individuals were like, oh, I didn't know that existed. So
we have a lot of work to do. Like, so
Yeah.
of the things that I feel like we talk about every week, calendar.spring.io, Spring Shell, Spring CLI,
Yep.
Open Rewrite, those three things, I feel like I talk about them every week, but yet I'm still surprised that our audience isn't aware. Like some people, what? Spring Shell? I've never heard. Open Rewrite? What is that?
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do still.
Yep. Cool. So that is the calendar. A lot going on next week. So we'll take a look at that next week and see what's happening there. But now I would like to jump into the State of Spring 2024 presented by Tanzu. Again, we kind of put this State of Spring survey out every year. We collect all the results and then we put a report together. I will put a link in the show notes where you can go get this. You can download this PDF and kind of dive into it a little bit further, but for now we're just going to kind of run through it. So the introduction. So a lot has changed in the software development world since our previous State of the Spring report. One of the things that you'll see in here is that it shows the results for the last 3 years. So not only are you seeing what people are doing today, but how much that might have changed from last year and the year before. So I really like that. There's some key things to say here that says, while 55% are running on the latest version of Spring Boot, 41% are still running Spring Boot 2.7. So that comes back to your point, DaShaun, and some of the questions we got earlier. It's like, yes, we do want to upgrade, but how do we go about that process? And this is why we keep talking about tools like Open Rewrite and the Application Advisor and how to make this happen.
So we've said Application Advisor. I don't think we've ever demoed it on the show. Here's the thing. Imagine a tool that when Spring Boot 3.3 came out, it had the recipes that would upgrade you from Spring 3.2 to 3.3. And it would just do it automatically. There is such a tool, and that tool came to this because of things like Open Rewrite and the Spring Boot Migrator. Like this, we learned from our customers that, hey, they want that. And what I believe a lot of our customers are kind of building their own things. It was another tool for them to build for Spring and for the things that are coming out of the Spring team, our Spring engineering team and our Spring consulting team. They are writing these recipes that you can have access to on the commercial side, and it gives you a tool that will automate that upgrade process. Now, there's Open Rewrite, and the Open Rewrite catalog has a massive set of recipes, and that's still kind of the core. But there's also some of these specific commercial only recipes that will be coming from Spring Application Advisor. So you have this opportunity. But the key is, takeaway, don't let the number of people that are still on Spring Boot 2.7, don't let that make you comfortable. Don't be comfortable being on the old releases, because maybe that's your competitors. Maybe that's the people that you want to be ahead of. I promise you that the companies and organizations that want to adjust and deal with the way that business is moving and the new pace of upgrading, they are not happy that they're still on older versions of Spring Boot or older versions of Java because they realize that they're leaving money on the table. They're not as secure. They're not as performant. So get upgraded. We're here to help.
Cool. So the second slide here just talks about demographics, where we are as far as region goes, years of Spring Boot experience. I see that's kind of, well, I guess that's not too shocking, but more than 5 years experience, 60% of our audience had, which is, that's really great to see. So we have a lot of veterans in here. People have been, organizations that have been using Spring Boot for more than 5 years.
Can I get you to go full page on that?
Yeah. Am I not?
Is that a little better? Directly, yeah. We're looking directly at the doc. I put the link in the chat.
All right.
All you have to do is search for State of Spring 2024, and you'll be able to find it.
All right. So it was divided up into 4 sections. The first section is springing into the future. One of the primary goals of the survey is to help us understand what are the big trends from the perspective of the Spring community, so we know where to invest our time. So all these different projects comes out, and instead of trying to focus on like 50 different things, kind of narrowing it down to these are the things that people who took the survey are kind of focused on. This year, we see a lot of Gen AI. So we know that from being at Spring I/O, we heard a lot about
this
that.
We're halfway through the show and we didn't say anything about Spring AI. And Spring AI was such a huge part of the conference last week, but it wasn't the only thing, right? There was so much more. It was a huge part, but there was so much more.
Yep. Kubernetes and Spring environments maturing and increasing challenges of the upgrade. So yeah, generative AI debuts as an important new application type. That makes sense. Again, what I like seeing is kind of the 3-year scale. And let me see, maybe I can jump in like a little bit more here. Come over here. And then if we look at what types of APIs do you expose to consumers? So plain JSON over HTTP, we can see, I just want to double check. Yeah. So the top line is this year. The last one is 2 years ago, and then 2021. So yeah, we can see that plain JSON over HTTP down a little, because we're starting to take advantage of some other ways of building APIs like GraphQL. See GraphQL up just a little bit, gRPC up, and then even OpenAPI, not to be confused with OpenAI.
Don't overlook this one, right? The third one, web services, SOAP, actually
look at that.
Increased. That was of everything else that's on that. That's the one where I'm like, huh, that's amazing. And it makes me wonder, like, what's happening? What's happening here? But that's okay, because it's not a volume. It's that they are taking at least one of those. And what I think, my perception, is that there are more companies that realize that they still have those types of services going to production.
Right.
Before, when they were taking those surveys, they didn't realize it, and that the upgrade story, the security story, has brought them to the forefront, and they're just more aware that they still have some of those things going to production. That's my takeaway. Yep. Again, who knows? We'll see.
Thomas says we need to get Hypermedia to first place. Yes, that would be awesome.
It depends.
Siva, how are you doing, my friend? Thanks for joining.
Siva. Yes.
The next one, what type of modern architectural approaches do you use when working with Spring? So from a microservices side of things, we're at 89%, down a little from 93% in 2022, and down a little from 3 years ago. So the microservices boom happened. We moved everything to microservices and then realized, okay, well, let's, there are some complexities that come with that. Maybe that wasn't the best choice for just moving right to it. Maybe, starting with a monolith and then breaking that down into microservices is a better approach. And then something that we see coming on here is modular monoliths, not traditional monoliths. So we see some people using those. Reactive down a little bit, serverless up a little bit. And yeah, I don't know, from a reactive perspective, could that be part of moving to JDK 21 and being able to take advantage of virtual threads? It might be.
Yeah, it might be. But again, this is not a volume. This is just Hey, do you take these types of workloads to production?
Yes, and it is not mutually exclusive. Like you could be taking all three of these types of applications to production.
Yeah, you might only have one microservice, right?
Right.
You might only have one micro, but that's all it.
Yeah,
Respondents
and we
get
saw
at least one.
And we saw Cora did an excellent job during the keynote of talking about Spring Monolith, and again, not like, you know, when new projects come out, you can't just tell people like, here's a new project, you have to use it. You go use it now. And I thought you did a good job of explaining the why, and then the how. So why do we need this? How can we use this? And I told you, I think we said this on the show last week. I think one of the big features that came in the latest release was the ability to include kind of a legacy folder. So if I have a legacy app that I want to move to something like Spring Monolith, I can bring that all over at once and then incrementally kind of move those out into modules. So I think that's going to really help the community move towards this.
Yes. So yeah, Siva, I think we are seeing more support for both, and it's when you're using the latest and greatest, like Siva is, your voice, your opinion matters. And we're always, now that we've got through 3.3, raising your voice now is the time, because they're planning Spring Boot 3.4. So yeah, get your feature requests in. And we know that those get looked at. And if you want to get support, get your friends to get behind those feature requests. Wink, wink. We might have talked about this.
Yep. And this is why this is important, right? So I have a comment here that says SOAP is still popular at public sector applications. Hope Spring Web Services project will still be supported. And that's why we do these surveys. Because if we surveyed, you know, however many people and 0 people were using SOAP still, then it would tell us to go into a different direction with this. But because you are giving us these results and saying these are the types of applications we're taking to production, we know where to focus our efforts. So the next time a Spring State of Spring survey comes up, please do consider taking it, because it helps us kind of guide the roadmap for all of our projects.
Absolutely.
So Kubernetes in Spring environments is maturing. What Spring features would help you deploy Spring on Kubernetes? There is compiling to native for instant startup and reduced memory consumption. We like seeing that. Application management of Spring applications in Kubernetes, and then Kubernetes native service discovery and configuration management. So you see those are all still being pretty heavily used. Oh, another one I know that's near and dear to your heart, scale to zero.
Yep. So this is 14%. I'm a little surprised at that number. But again, they're doing it at least once, right? So 14%. Yep. So yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, this is very interesting to me. I don't have a lot of money to waste on services being up when they're not being used.
Yep.
And probably our audience doesn't have unlimited budgets, right?
Yep.
So every penny that we can save for more important things is valuable.
Yeah, I think I had a couple conversations last week about, hey, I have this project that I want to take to production. It's just like a personal project. I don't have, like you say, I don't have cloud money, right? I don't have cloud money to spend $50 to $100 a month on this thing that is making no money, and it's really just a passion project of mine. Where can I host it, right? So we've done some shows on the past on different places that you can host it, but you know, people say, hey, I've looked at something like AWS and I can't really afford to host this passion project there. And a lot of the conversations I had is, have you considered running this on something like a serverless platform like AWS Lambda, or every cloud provider out there has one, and doing this as scale to zero? Because the reason it costs so much is you are paying to have this server on 24/7. When if this is your passion project and you don't have a lot of users, you're probably not using it 24/7, right? So maybe consider throwing it on. You can take a whole Spring project, a Spring MVC project, and run that on an AWS Lambda. I don't think a lot of people realize that, because the first time I heard that, I was like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that. And so that might be an option to publish that out on the cloud and not have to pay those costs. So,
Yep. Very, very good point here. Scale to zero does not equal function as a service.
Right. So we can take a function that just sits out there and we can execute that function when a request comes in. We can also execute entire applications. So scale to zero just means, hey, I am not using this all day. I don't need it running 24/7. I'm not handling large volumes of throughput. So yeah, this is and it's indicative of this graph here. 35% would like to use scale to zero, but maybe the education is not there. Like I said, maybe you don't know that you can take a whole MVC app and run it in an environment that scales to zero.
I'm going to take it one step further. And I actually had a couple of these conversations and even did a little live stream about scale to zero is not just for your applications that you're running in production.
Mm-hmm.
Your test environment. If it's the weekend and nobody's delivering any features and there's nothing happening in your CI/CD process, why is your test environment up if nobody's hitting it? So I'd like to take it a step further. You can listen to me now, hear me later. Your environments can also scale to zero if you have a platform that has an API that allows you to do that. And you should be looking for a platform that has an API that allows you to do that, because nobody wants to waste money. You're not going to get a bigger budget next year. The news, it's in. The news is here. You're not going to get a bigger budget, but if you can be that person that can save your company $1 million, €1 million, you might get yourself a pat on the back. You might get your team cookies.
Ooh, I love cookies.
Scale zero is not just for apps, right? It's a pattern. It's a decision. It's an architectural decision that you need to make for your organization. But it's
not browser cookies either, like real cookies.
Real cookies. More raisin.
All right. Cool. So here's kind of the rate of change is increasing across the board with new Java releases and new Spring Boot releases every 6 months. So failure to upgrade, time to modernize. Here we are looking at, again, this in an organization, I could have selected this, selected more than one because I might have different apps on different versions. But in 2024, we see that Spring Boot 3.2, 55% of people surveyed said they are running Spring Boot 3.2 in production. That makes me happy, DaShaun.
That's amazing, right? But it might just be one app that's on 3.2.
Yep.
But that's still amazing, right? That it's possible.
So we see some Spring Boot 3.1, 3.0, and then Spring Boot 2.7 still has a lot, 41%.
This survey result could have been inside of one org. Right. In every org, there's good, better, and best apps. In your org, what we're trying to do, we want to help bring that top and bottom closer. We want to bring the bottom closer to the top. We want to make it so that in your org, there's nothing older than Spring Boot 1. We don't want you taking pre 1.0 Spring Boot to production. Clearly, some people are. And we don't want you taking 2.0 or 2.7 even. We want you to be up now on 3.3. So what we're trying to do is we want you to get on 3.3. We want to bring the good, better, and best apps and orgs inside of your organization. We want to bring them closer to the top and get the most benefit, because when you're there, you can help us and the Spring team and the ecosystem move forward, and you can help us figure out the roadmap for what's next.
Yeah, and there are two trains of thoughts here, and we've talked to customers that have gone down both paths. One train of thought is, let's pick out a very small app in our organization and upgrade that, because if something goes wrong, it's not really a big deal, right? And that's okay. That's a safe play. There are other organizations that said, let's take our biggest app and the one that is driving all of the financial stability in our company, and let's upgrade that, because that is where we are going to see the most performance gains. And that's another train of thought. And I know.
Yep.
Yeah. And
I used to say, do the little ones, get through the easy stuff. Yeah. If you have the ability to go and find one that will have the most impact.
Right.
Great idea.
What types of tooling does your organization use or want to use for keeping Spring security applications up to date? So manual, using release notes and migration guides, that is at 65%. And this probably comes back to, like you said, we keep having conversations about open rewrite and tools that we have in there. And you ask somebody like, hey, do you know about open rewrite? And they said, no. And you said, oh, let me show you a demo, because it is clear to us that we're still trying to tell everyone that there are better ways to kind of upgrade your application. So this makes sense to me. GitHub Dependabot, that is at 27%. Spring tool features inside VS Code or Eclipse. Spring Boot Migrator, there we see it at 23%. So we've been talking a lot about Open Rewrite. What is Spring Boot Migrator, DaShaun?
So in my head, there's kind of two ways, two approaches, two frameworks, if you will, for writing these recipes. I think that Open Rewrite and the Open Rewrite framework has clearly been the winner, but the Spring Boot Migrator, which was kind of released, I don't know which one started first, but there was definitely collaboration at some point. It was released and it kind of had different targets, and it does things that might not be useful in the open source. So there are a lot of customers that have been using Spring Boot Migrator over the years, and they have developed Spring Boot Migrator based recipes. So there's a lot of forks, and that's what they're doing. And then there's some other unique things that it does. So I can say this, that we'll still have customers that are using both Spring Boot Migrator and Open Rewrite in the near future. But yeah, it's just another flavor of recipes. But I think that Open Rewrite has become the winner, and our commercial version, our commercial tool, Spring Application Advisor, is basing its recipes going forward on Open Rewrite.
And then I see self-made tooling. I know we heard from Netflix, who does this kind of at scale, right? They still use Open Rewrite, but then they have some tooling internally to say, like, upgrade this project, and it will go through and use those to rewrite. But it also, like, maybe there's some like cleanup that it needs to do afterwards, or do this one thing. So a lot of tools built around things like Open Rewrite.
I'm asking Siva. I feel like Renovate is a tool that I heard about last week, and I've heard about before, but I don't think I've had my hands on it. Is that a tool, or is that you're just saying like, hey, cool, I think I need to go do some Googling, because I feel like people are talking about Renovate in terms of the tool, and I haven't had my hands on it. So yeah, thank you for that. That's a good reminder of taking notes.
Cool. The next section, again, this was broken up into 4 sections. The next one is on blossoming projects. Spring continues to track the latest technology trends with the introduction of new Spring modules and by incorporating the latest open sources innovation. This year, we explore one of our latest new modules, Spring AI, and note continued adoption of Spring Monolith and the various cloud integrations. So if we dive into this a little bit, what Spring modules do you use in your environment? Spring Security at the top was 76%. And that doesn't surprise me at all, right? Most applications that we're taking to production, even back office applications, need security, right? So Spring Security is at the heart of that. Spring Data at 73%. Makes sense. We need secure apps. We need apps that talk to different data sources. Spring Web MVC, still one of the biggest stacks out there for building, whether it's like full stack applications or web APIs, right? And then go ahead.
I was just wondering. I'm wondering what was on the list of those.
I would think everything.
And I'm surprised based on what I've seen. I'm surprised that Spring Batch isn't higher up. But again, this is just like a sample, right? It's like, hey, choose all that apply. So yeah, they're always pushing results.
Kafka, Batch, and Session right there below that. So yeah, pretty cool. Spring AI is the hot new project, the new hotness, as the kids say, DaShaun.
And this survey is already outdated, right? Because of all the new stuff that we saw last week.
Yeah,
but still, it's a good sense. We'll get some details here.
Steady growth for Spring's public cloud integrations. So we have things like Spring Cloud AWS, Spring Cloud Azure, Spring Cloud GCP, Spring Cloud Alibaba. So we can see that Spring Cloud AWS up 37% from 32% 2 years ago. So yeah, we can see these adoptions. People are moving their workloads to the clouds. That shouldn't be news to anyone, but we see that trend continuing. This is a good one. I like this a lot. So what criteria do you consider when deciding to use a new Spring module? Maturity is one. Hey, I want to make sure that this is a mature project. We're not going to take it to production. It's not going to go away. Google, very famous for doing this. Documentation. We had a lot of conversations about this last week. The Spring documentation is just amazing. It continues to get better. And I think that is a very important piece to learning a new project, a new language, a new technology. If you go to, because everybody asks, like, how do I learn new thing X? And I say, there's a combination of resources, but for me, documentation is what I go to first. Like, do you have good documentation? Are you a mature product? If you aren't, if there's like no documentation or very little, it's like, do I really want to invest my time in this? So yeah, it's really great to see that up there. Community support, popularity, approved by the enterprise architect team, case studies, and commercial support. So yeah, all great criteria in considering to use a new project. Ooh, test containers, most popular new technology. In the last report, Project Loom was at the top of the heap, more on Loom below. This year, test containers jumped onto the scene as the hottest new JVM technology. Stakeholders had more positive view of test containers than any other technology. 92% have an opinion that is either very positive or somewhat positive. 92%, that is really awesome and not surprising to me at all.
Agreed. Like it's amazing, and it also keeps on getting better, and especially with the popularity of AI, that we're able to pull in these different backends and run tests against your AI models, right? Because AI responses are non-deterministic, so you can have different. How do you test those things? But test containers makes it easier. So we're starting to now see these patterns around testing and the time that it takes to do valuable testing. Even what Siva was saying, Siva knows all about it. It becomes super important going forward.
And we saw our friend Edu there, who added that support for using test containers in Spring AI projects. So yeah, that's really great to see. Project Loom was our top technology last time. Apps that use blocking IO benefit from its lightweight virtual threaded model, reducing memory footprint and or increasing concurrency. 37% plan to use Project Loom, more than any other technology covered in the survey. So yeah, that is, I think in conjunction with where are we on the upgrade process, right? We need to be on JDK 21. We need to be on Spring Boot 3.2 to take advantage of this. So let's get our applications upgraded so we can take advantage of features like this. Native compilation, GraalVM versus Project Laden. Java applications are typically compiled to run on the JVM, which includes an overhead of its own compared with natively compared binaries. Compiling Java applications to native executables reduces the startup latency and reduces the memory footprint by an order of magnitude. So there are two kind of thought processes here. GraalVM, which we saw a really great presentation by Alina on GraalVM. I'm doing a write-up on that as part of my kind of overview. So there's GraalVM and then Project Laden. Do they have any stats on that or no? No, those are just
we saw those
highlighting.
Stats from Sebastian.
We did, right?
Sebastian talked a lot about that. I think maybe some of those things weren't available at the time of the report. Gotcha.
Yeah, so AI has its own section in here. So it's broken out into its own section. Similarly to when we go to conferences, we see entire tracks on AI. I know for, there's just a lot of buzz around AI and rightfully so. Since our previous report, the use of generative AI tools to assist with coding has emerged as one of the hottest trends in software development. For this year's survey, we dug deeper to understand how Spring stakeholders feel about AI development tools, what their plans are, and how they want to use new AI tools delivered. So the question was, which of the following most closely represents your opinion of AI-supported development tools? One is game-changing for effective development at 19%. Helps sometimes not throughout the development process. So yeah, you can use generative AI for writing documentation or putting together some kind of summary of documentation or products. Only good for getting started when using unfamiliar tech at 15%. Fun, but not useful for real work at 11%. So yeah, it's still very new, still very early on. Again, Spring AI just hit milestone 1. A lot of great features there. So
a lot of
looking
breaks,
forward.
right? Like if you're using one of the older versions, upgrade. I'll say it one more time, upgrade, because they made a lot of changes, and the changes are coming fast, and there's only going to be more. So get upgraded, upgrade your stuff. We got some new APIs. We got some breaking changes. Excuse me, get there. We want you to get there.
73% plan to adopt AI-supported development tools in the next 12 months. So that is everyone, mostly everyone, right? That's pretty cool to see. Okay.
Yeah,
Spring
developer
is your
IDE integration continues to be an important piece of what we're doing.
Yep. This is cool. Where do you get your Spring information from? Check all that apply. Spring.io at 69%, reference documentation 68%, Stack Overflow 66%, search engine
I would have
65%,
loved to see this
GitHub
compared to last year.
54%.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see this. I hope to see this next year. I know that these numbers will change.
Yeah, and speaking of AI, we'll probably see something like ChatGPT on there as well. Like that's where people are going to get information. So yeah, this is pretty indicative of stuff. Although for me, I've started using Stack Overflow less and less.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if it's ChatGPT's pulling stuff from there too. But using documentation, GitHub, search, ChatGPT, that's usually where I'm getting.
Here's the thing: the documentation with the rate of change, the GPTs cannot keep up with the rate of change. They can't keep up with the documentation. So if you're using Spring Boot 3.3, that's not on Stack Overflow. That's not on ChatGPT. You don't have access to that information. You've got to go to the source, and that's at spring.io. And I heard many people tell me how excited they were about all the documentation changes that they see, and they get value out of it on spring.io. Thanks again to all of the movement moving towards Antora to get that searchability and having documentation easily findable and parsable and searchable for the different versions that you're on. You might not be on 3.3, but you can still have access to what you need on spring.io.
All right, this survey result is very important, but I think this is the most important piece in the whole document, DaShaun. Top 5 information sources. When we asked about the sources of information, Spring.io remained at the top, chosen by 69%, reference documentation, Stack Overflow, etc. Josh Long earns an honorable mention again this year, along with our other 2 developer advocates, Dan Vega and DaShaun Carter, who host the Spring Office Hours podcast.
That is, That's amazing.
How cool
That's
is
amazing.
that?
Well, we got to keep
it wasn't
doing
an option on there, and people were actually writing us in as a way that they get informed about the Spring ecosystem. Are you going to cry? Do you need a minute?
Okay. I think somebody's cutting onions.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, that was awesome.
I love our job. Thank you guys that wrote in. Like, that's pretty special. And I am a little choked up.
And I just saw this. I didn't see it before. But yeah, 26% now use generative AI as an information source. So that kind of tracks with what I thought. That'll be on next year's report. Spring docs continue to improve. We said that. We constantly get feedback from the community saying the documentation is awesome, and I agree.
Yes.
Observability is hot. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So what are you interested in learning more about Spring? So this is a great question. Like I have a baseline, but there's some more things that I want to learn about. What are those things? At the top, application observability with logs, metrics, and tracing, 54%. Architecture or designing Spring applications. So Spring Monolith. Again, you mentioned 2 of your big takeaways from this conference were observability and Spring Monolith, and that tracks with everything going on. Latest and greatest features, so Spring 6.2, Spring Boot 3.2, application security, and Kubernetes and containers. So yeah, not surprising.
This is good. And it's valid. Like there's nothing here that's like, oh, that I didn't expect to hear that. Like this is all,
Right.
this all makes sense.
Right. So at the end, there's some summary and recommendations. Again, talking about
Right.
modern architecture and platforms, uses of AI. And that's it. Visit
That's
Spring
good.
IO for all the resources, training, documentation, and much more as you continue your journey into the world of Spring. So that's it. The state of Spring 2024. That was interesting. Again, we will leave the link to that in the show notes if you want to download that yourself. Show it off to your boss and say, listen, everybody, we need to learn more about observability. We need to talk about Spring Monolith. We need to look at this Spring AI project and see if it's something we can incorporate. Because this is, as DaShaun said, if you're not thinking about it, your competitors are. So this is something we all need to start looking at.
How do you continue to stay on? How do you continue to learn the best practices, learn what's going on in the ecosystem, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. How do you do that? Well, we are trying to show you a way here with this Spring Ops Hours, but maybe your team doesn't want to join a live chat, but your teams still need this. They need something like this. And I think that I've planted the seeds with at least a couple of organizations that having a conversation at Spring IO, they are going to take this idea of having their own office hours inside of their org, and they asked for help. And I offered help. The idea, would it be nice for you? Would you like to have an office hours, not on Monday, because we're busy on Mondays, but later in the week where you could say, hey, here's what was talked about at Spring Office Hours, but we want to curate what matters to our company, and we would like to have an office hours inside of our orgs because we don't want to be in the best bucket all by ourselves. We want to help the good and better buckets get closer to the best bucket, and we want to be able to start deliver that information in a continuous way, not just once, not just because I'm excited because I just left Spring IO and I want to share. We want to give you a way, a format, a practice of having this regular kind of channel to deliver your questions, to deliver what matters inside of your org, and we want to help. So if you're interested in maybe sprinkling the seed of having an office hours inside of your org, call us. We're here to help.
All right, DaShaun, I got a question that I'm going to tee up for you because I know you love talking about this. Which Java 22 package should I use? If you go to like SDK Man and say, what are all the different candidates? What are all the different flavors of JDK out there? I'm a little overwhelmed. Which one should I use?
This is, I think it's a valid question. It also comes a lot. I like to say that JDKs are one size fits most, not one size fits all. And it is worth your while to evaluate which JDKs have the best performance for you and what you're doing. So when you're out there, and this is an exercise that you should be able to do, just like anything else, what I'm going to encourage you and your teams to do is every 6 months, when we get a new version of Java, go ahead and evaluate the decision that you made for the JDK that you're taking to production. Evaluate which garbage collection you're using and come up with something. Like you can see a great example in the Spring team. They have a set of smoke tests that they can evaluate, that they evaluate with multiple versions of the JVM. But for you and your org, come up with a suite of tests that give you a good sampling of the types of applications that you take to production. And every 6 months, you should evaluate each of those and take it. I can't tell you which one to use because I don't know about your application that you're taking to production. But what I can tell you is you have the ability to go and grab one of dozens of flavors of JVM that you can go and test. And here's how you do it. Come up with a suite of tests that are representative samples of what you're taking to production and evaluate it every 6 months. That's my advice.
I like it. All right.
Good question.
All right.
Yes.
I think we are at time. DaShaun, that was a lot of fun. I know you're still on the road, so I hope you get home soon. And I know we will see each other in a couple weeks.
It was great to see you last week.
It
I had
was
a lot of fun getting to hang out with you.
I know it's too far and few between. But a couple weeks we're together
a couple weeks
again,
away.
and
We do it again.
And then we are in your hometown.
We're gonna have a
Kansas
couple
City
weeks of getting to hang out
for
This is great.
KCDC.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to barbecue. I want some Kansas City barbecue.
Are you bringing your family?
So, no, they will not be there. They have some things going on. So
I was gonna say if you're gonna bring your family, we have a new water park that's right down the street from us, and yeah, we could definitely make that a thing. So,
not this time, but hopefully next time. But I will be there for some barbecue, so I'm excited about that.
All right.
So yeah, this is a lot of fun. State of Spring. We'll get that link in the show notes. And again, next week, we plan on covering Spring Boot 3.3. So take a look at that. And then if you have any ideas or suggestions for shows, please feel free to reach out to us. We are here to serve the community.
I don't think that KCDC is sold out yet. I think there might be a couple of tickets if you're interested in seeing me and Dan and tons of
possibly
other.
a live show from there. We should do a live show again. That'll be fun.
Should. Then, yeah, I think we'd love to see you at KCDC. I believe the site is kcdc.info.
It is. Yep.
And we'll put that up into the chat and the show notes. I believe the tickets are still available. KCDC.
Awesome. Yeah, get those. It's an amazing conference. Always have a lot of fun there. So one last thing that I like to keep asking you to do, if you can help us out. We just crossed 10,000 downloads on podcasts. So just the podcast alone
that's great.
Is getting downloaded. We can get more people to download it. If you would just take a few seconds and go leave a review on whatever podcast.
I mean, listen to the podcast first. Listen to it first.
Yeah, I mean, listen. But if you want to, leave us a nice review. Tell others that, hey, these two guys, I know something, a thing or two, and they're fun to listen to every week. So go ahead and check it out. So we would appreciate that.
To bring you the news, we want to give you the TLDR on what's going on in the Spring ecosystem every week, and we would like to continue doing that.
Yes. All right. With that, we will see you next week. And thank you for joining. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you.